for acceptance of old Naira notes as legal tender in the country, fixing February 15 to entertain the case. Let's talk more on the contending issues surrounding the prolonged scarcity of Naira notes across the country. I'm now being joined by a Chief Executive Officer of Cowry Assets Management Limited, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. But first, let me tell you, breaking news now after the council meeting, just coming in, is that the Council of States welcomes the Naira redesign policy, but they're advising the central bank to recirculate old notes if it cannot print enough new notes and make them available to ease economic tension. The council state meeting just ended at the presidential villa in Abuja, and my colleague is just dropping that. Before we go that route, first I want you to tell me what is happening around your locality with regards to cash. Banks around CMD, around this location, are all locked up.
Well, in VI, where my office is, and Lekki, where I live, there's still a lot of queues at the POS, at the ATM machines, where people are queuing to make withdrawals. I have actually intervened on this matter a couple of times. And my position has been that the central bank should instruct the banks to reopen cash payment over the counter and limit the cash payment per week to not more than 100,000 per account holder. That way, we will still achieve the primary objective of this policy, which is to digitize the economy without necessarily putting people to go through these kind of difficulties. I think that has not been done, but once that is done, I believe we should have easing of the pressures and easing of the tension we have around the economy.
Well, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, something seems to be wrong somewhere, and some say for you to mop up a particular amount and reprint a particular amount, this has to do with data. Did we have accurate data on what we put out and what we're putting in so that we won't run into this? It's really not looking good around this locality, I must tell you. What will be happening in the rural areas if we have this happening in the city?
Interestingly, the pressure will certainly be more in the city than in the rural areas. Because in terms of economic activity, in terms of commercial transactions, the volume of commercial transactions is skewed in favor of the urban areas, unlike the rural areas. The rural areas have minimal need for cash. Most rural dwellers, particularly farmers, almost live in an island mode where they produce and eat what they produce. It's not that they don't have commercial engagement, but it's not as intense as urban dwellers. Take, for instance, you are a journalist. You don't grow tomato, you don't grow cassava, you don't grow anything. So every food you eat, you buy it. A rural dweller may actually grow the yam or cassava and does not have as much compelling need for commercial exchange as you have. So the pressure will certainly be in the urban areas more. But that does not take away the fact that they will also have difficulties, particularly the location of nearest ATM machines. Our bank branches are farther away from them than they are to urban dwellers.
The POS guys are now having a good time. They're making so much money. The last I heard, if you want to withdraw 10,000 Naira, you part away with about 2,000 Naira. So you're getting 8,000 Naira at the end of the day. Is this supposed to be the order of the day?
You know, sometimes when we talk about economic decisions and economic actions, we forget that economic agents or humans are rational, and economic agents take rational decisions. And wherever there is a scarcity of a product, the product will command a higher price. So what we're dealing with is that we have scarcity of Naira notes, and anybody who is trading, who's been able to trade on Naira notes, will naturally see an opportunity for profit maximization. It is not at the realm of ethical or ethics, as to say, is it right? If you go to ethics, you say you do not make a usual profit or too much of exploitative profit. But that's not what you're dealing with. You're dealing with pure commercial decisions or commercial transactions. I think for me, the key thing is to address the problem. Clearly, there is an underlying political thinking that went into the decision to redesign the currency as well as limit withdrawals just around this time. I clearly don't have any objection to those political considerations that may have informed the decision of the central bank. But I think we can also do this in a more orderly manner. If you allow people to withdraw, let me tell you, not many people have 200,000 naira in their account or 500,000 in their account. If one of the objectives is to make sure that politicians do not buy votes, if you allow those who have money in their account to withdraw maximum 100,000 per week, just have 2 more weeks before the presidential election. So the best anybody can withdraw. And if you are going to do it, you do it by account holder, which means once you have your BVN, which is unique, irrespective of the number of accounts you have, or number of banks you have accounts, you can only withdraw 100,000 naira. Once you withdraw from a bank like Zenith or Diamond Bank or GT Bank, you can withdraw from Access Bank and UBA. If you do it per named account holder. So that way, we're not going to have so much liquidity into the economy as to encourage those vote buying. But you still have enough liquidity to support commercial transactions. And when you talk of, did we have enough data? The central bank governor said that when he made the broker, he said that the volume of currency in circulation was 3.2 trillion naira, 3.23 trillion naira. But of that amount, only about 500 billion was actually within the banking system, which means about 2.7 trillion naira had been sterilized in the homes of some people who had other ulterior motive to holding that cash. And that's what they say they have been able to bring back about 1.9 trillion of that back into the central bank or into the banking system. So clearly they had data. And if I also go by the information they have put across to us, the Deputy Governor of Central Bank said that they have printed 500 million units of the new currencies. And what I did was do a back of the envelope analysis and say, look, if they've printed 500 million units of the new Naira notes, let's take it that they printed 200 million units of the 1,000 Naira notes, and then 200 million units of the 500 Naira notes, and maybe the 100 million units of the 200 Naira note. They would have printed about 320 billion Naira. So if the amount of currency that was serving the need of commercial transactions in the country was 500 billion, and the now printed 320 billion, we should have enough of the new currency circulation, unless if they not print out the 320 billion. I just did the back of the envelope based on the volume of currency they've printed, and I just did a rational allocation that if you are doing that, you have to look at the currency units that are in more demand. So unless if what's going on there, even the money they are injecting the same are being mobbed up by politicians who are bent on buying votes, that's the only reason why you may still be having that pressure, and the central bank seems not to be budging. Obviously, the central bank is not coming out to tell us, look, this is the amount of money we have injected into the economy, but I clearly see pressures, and I believe they are getting to feel the pressure from the public. There must be something that they are not revealing to the public that is making them hold back from injecting additional liquidity into the economy. If what they've injected have been mobbed up, then they will be reluctant to inject more because the objective, part of the political objective or other considerations may be compromised if they keep injecting liquidity into the economy.
Well, indeed, whatever objective, now putting people through all of this too, really is really not looking good. And I would ask you before I let you go that many say the cash is really not the issue. What about the CBN Ways and Means financing of more than 22 trillion naira? Some say that's a bigger liquidity management issue. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that also helped me bring some aspects that we seem to have ignored. Of course, people have actually said that this will lead to heighten or the decline in inflation rate. And I said it has nothing to do with inflation because the inflation pressure we're facing today was largely driven by ways and means funding, insecurity in the northern part of the country, which affected food production, as well as the depreciation of the local currency, which has led to a pass-through effect on imported items. But the ways and means fund of about 22.7 trillion naira would have, it's part of the pressures we're having in inflation. And that takes you to what we call money supply in the economy. If you look at money supply in the economy, the figure as of December was about 51.7 trillion naira. That includes M1, M2. When you're talking of the cash in currency circulation, which was about 3.22 trillion. You had bank balances, current account balances, savings account balances, overdraft balances, by the time you look at all the components of money supply, the volume of cash in circulation or current circulation is an inconsequential part of the money supply. And therefore, the amount of cash in circulation cannot be a pressure point for inflation. It's just about 0.6%, because 3.2 trillion out of 51.7 trillion is about 0.6, about 6%, about 6.6% of the total money supply. So it's not a problem. The problem is coming from the likes of the ways and means funding when you talk of inflation.
So if we look at all of this coupled with the scarcity of course, PMS that we've had in recent times, what is your projection for expected inflation maybe in another 2 months?
Well, we should expect that inflation that moderated in December may reverse in the month of January when the general inflation figure comes out, principally because we've seen an uptick in the price of energy sources and an uptick in the price of transportation. And those things have direct impact on general prices. We saw PMS in some locations selling at about 300 Naira per liter. Of course, we've seen some little moderation. And then we've seen high cost of diesel in the region of 700 to 800 Naira, which has a direct cost impact on input cost of manufacturers. So one should expect that inflation rate will reverse the marginal decline we saw in December, where it dropped from about 21.47% to 21.34%.
Mr. Johnson, something just came to my mind, and that to be final before I let you go. The other option for us should be the online platforms, and we know what is happening along that route at the moment. Most of the USSD codes are not even connecting, so you're left with just internet transactions. So do you think we have that capacity? I always like to understand this, to accommodate the volume of transactions that we have at this moment. We didn't used to have it this much. So do you think we are ready? All of this needed to have been put in place.
You know, Tolu, that's a question that is difficult for anyone to answer. And I'll tell you why I say difficult to answer. Your preamble, you said that the volume of online payment increased by 40%. And you talked about the 38.8 trillion Naira transaction that went through online payment platforms. So if we have that volume of transactions going through the online payment platforms, I do not think that the smaller volume transactions, because the people who are really most affected are those who are doing small volume transactions, should have been should have clustered the network to the point that we're having the level of failures we currently have. Which is why I say there may be some components of information that are not publicly available, because I don't think the banking industry does not have the capacity to execute the transactions that should come through the system as a result of this cashless policy. If you look at the fact that we have improved level of network connectivity in the country, so it's not a case of network connectivity. Many locations have 4G network, and there are some, I think some cities have even launched 5G network. If you compare normal calls and data calls today, the data calls are even clearer, which means you have enough bandwidth to take on electronic payment transactions. So there must be something that is just a matter of capacity. It has to do with some other factor that may not be in the public domain.
Well, it's a good way to live it. Mr. Johnson Chukwu, thank you so much for your time as usual. I do have a great weekend. Mr. Johnson Chukwu is the CEO, Managing Director, Cowry Asset Management Limited.